Hey guys, welcome back to my Atlanta Division preview. Today we're going to be previewing first the Buffalo Sabres, who I have finishing fifth in the Atlantic Division. So they're coming off a bottom five finish again, although Jack Eichel missed a ton of time, and they won the lottery though, so they got to draft Darlene. So who really cares where they finished? That they got the grand prize. Um, and Darlene, I guess, is from what I read and from what I see, is projected to be a stud number one defenseman for a really, really long time, and kind of the mold of like a Hedman type. He should be a top five defenseman at some point in his career, probably for an extended period of time as well. So looking at their offense, it's kind of meh. It's average. I don't really see anything too special. Jack Eichel, I think, is going to explode this season, though. Just looking at a lot of his underlying numbers, he's an elite skater. Like if you look at his zone entries and his zone exits per 60, especially for someone that size, it's absolutely incredible how special he is at creating zone entries and controlling possession with the puck and generating high danger chances. One of the things I do recognize though about Eichel is that 5-on-5 he hasn't really produced at an elite level, especially at a player that's going to be paid $10 million this season. But I think that might get better with time as we saw a guy like Nathan McKinnon explode last season. I think he's quite kind of similar to Jack Eichel in the fact that they're both offensively oriented players with elite skating and elite offensive IQ. And I think with some better teammates and line mates and some better defense behind him, a guy like Jack Eichel with the power play time is going to explode. And I can see him hitting 75 or 80 points this season for sure. And I actually do like Sam Reinhart. I think he's better than a lot of people think he is. Obviously, the thing he doesn't really have that one thing that separates him from the competition, but he's extremely smart and his offensive and defensive IQ is right there. And I think that um, as a right winger, he's probably a second line right winger, but I mean that's a really good piece to have. I don't think he's really a bust by any means, but I think that the expectations for him were too high coming into the NHL in the first place. I love the Jeff Skinner trade. They essentially give up nothing. I wasn't really too high on Cliff Poo. I think he could be probably a third liner in the future, but when you can acquire a guy like Skinner for Cliff Poo and a couple of mid round draft picks, then you do that every single day of the week. I think that was a very, very um, reasonable and cheap acquisition cost for a guy like Skinner, even though he's a pending UFA. They needed to replace the production they lost from a guy like Evander Kane, who was one of the best league's best 5-on-5 goal scoring wingers in the NHL. So they got a guy like Jeff Skinner, who's not the greatest defensively, but he's an extremely offensively talented player. And if he plays with Eichel, I could see that pairing doing really well. Um, so I hated the Ryan O'Reilly trade. It was a bunch of spare parts, in my opinion, like four quarters for $1, something like that. Because I don't really think Tage Thompson is that good. If I was doing that deal with St. Louis, I would have demanded probably Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou. I think that those two are a step above Tage Thompson for sure. I wouldn't have done the deal because although there was that artificial deadline, they didn't really need to trade him. I would have kept him and kept him in that third line center spot or second line center spot, insulated Jack Eichel and Casey Mills a little bit. And I think Ryan O'Reilly is an incredibly underrated player in terms of his. If you look at his offensive and defensive goals above replacement comparables, they're really good. He's one of the best two-way centers in the league. He takes a ton of faceoffs, wins the most faceoffs in the league year after year, and I don't think he really got to show in Buffalo what he is, and I think in St. Louis he's going to thrive and prove to everyone he's a number one, a first line center. Um, so the next question I have is how will Casey Millsat do? Um, from what I read from guys like Corey Pronman and Scott Wheeler, he's an elite playmaking centerman, and watching him at the World Juniors, I thought the exact same thing. I have really high hopes for the kid. I just don't think that. I mean, if you look at the center combinations in the Atlantic Division, you obviously start off with Tavares, Kadri, and Matthews, and I just don't think that the Sabres center depth, especially with two young guys like Eichel and Middlestat, will be able to survive guys like Matthews, Tavares, and Kadri, or guys like Barkov and Trocheck, or guys like Point and Stamkos, or even in Boston, Bergeron and Krejci. There's a lot of good 1-2 center combinations in the Atlantic Division, and that's a lot of responsibility to put on two. What is it? A 22-year-old, excuse me, and a 19-year-old. And beyond that, there's not a lot of depth at all. So looking at the defense, it's not very good right now. Rasmus Dahlin could step in and should step in and be a top four defenseman, likely a second pairing guy right now. With experience, he's definitely going to be a first pairing guy within 2 years. He's going to be a first pairing guy, probably a number one guy, just how skilled he is and how smart he is. I don't really like Rasmus Dahlin, although his possession stats did improve considerably last season. Although I think he's probably a number four defenseman, offensively skilled, and he's being used in that matchup role against other teams' top players. But his value really comes from the offensive side of the game, and you need to really shelter him a little bit more than they have in the past. Zach Bogosian's pretty bad. Um, yeah, I don't know if he's an NHL defenseman at all, but Marco Scandal's pretty good. He's average. He's a second pairing guy for sure. Jake McCabe, I actually like his tools, and from what I watched, I really did like him. But his on ice results don't really match up to the eye test, and I don't really know whether he's a second pairing guy or a third pairing guy for right now. But I can definitely see the value in keeping him around because I do like his tools, and I don't think Nathan Beaulieu is anything special either. So they made a goaltending change out as Robin Lehner in as Carter Hutton, and Carter Hutton was one of the best goalies in the NHL. If you look at expected save percentage versus actual save percentage, he did a really, really good job of backing up a guy like Jake Allen, who struggles all the time and never really lives up to his reputation. Um, so will Carter Hutton be able to repeat himself as a starter this season in Buffalo? I'm not sure about that. We're just need to wait and see. I don't know if they're gonna split stars between Hutton and Allmark, but um, I think Carter Hutton definitely has the talent. Not as a long term option, but he can give you a solid 45, 50 games. So the most important, or actually going to the key statistics, sorry. In terms of their possession stats, they're absolutely horrible. Corsi 4 percentage, 46.51%, which is 29th in the NHL. Corsi 4 per 60, 49.93, 31st in the NHL. Corsi against per 60, 50.92, which is 18th in the NHL. So much better defensively than they were offensively, probably giving up too much on on the defensive side of the puck, just and not providing enough on the support on the offensive side of the puck, which is why they generated no shot attempts basically. Um, and that should improve by adding a guy like Dahlin because just looking at the way he plays, he should be a puck possession monster, just creating zone entries like a madman. So, excuse me. In terms of goals for per 60, 1.70 goals for per 60, which is last in the NHL. Goals against per 60, 2.52, which is 27th in the NHL. So, when we're going to look at the expected goals in a second, it's clear that they met their expected goals for percentage, which you probably could have told by their possession stats. They don't generate too much offense at all, but they grossly underperform their expected goals against, and that lies almost solely on the goaltending and a guy like Robin Lehner. So expected goals for per 60, 1.84, which is less than the NHL. Expected goals against per 60, 2.25, which is 14th in the NHL. So they underperform their expected goals against, and that's essentially, as I mentioned, down to Robin Lehner. PDO, they were 97.91, which is 31st in the NHL. So a little bit unlucky. I'm guessing that has a lot to do with the save percentage, the on ice save percentage of Robin Lehner and Chad Johnson being not very good. But I'm sure if I look into it, their shooting percentage as a team on ice wasn't too good as well. And in terms of their penalty differential, they were a plus 23, which is 7th in the NHL, which is actually really good because I like their power play. If you have a guy like Dahlin quarterbacking it, Eichel is a wizard on the power play on that left hand side, launching one timers. And if you add a guy like Skinner and a middle stat, then you're set because you have playmakers and shooters on all facets on the power play. So least important player is Zach Bogosian. They shouldn't really play him that many minutes at all. Shelter him at all costs. Play him on the third pairing. He makes too much money and isn't very good. So in conclusion, I have them finishing fifth in the Atlantic Division. Definitely an improvement. I don't really like the Ryan O'Reilly trade, which is going to set them back. However, they're too young to make an impact right now. Too many question marks. They are really talented, and they will be really good in a playoff lock in the future once guys like Dahlin develop, but the time isn't right just yet. So thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one, and peace.